That takes us to our discussion agenda, the discussion of memorandum of understanding with Irmo Chapin Rec Commission and the Bridge Development League.
All right, I'll invite to the lectern our Chief of Academics, Ms. Tina McCaskill, to begin the discussion.
Good evening, Board Chair, Dr. Ross. Thank you for being here tonight and letting us talk with you a little bit. I'm going to introduce Stephen Puckett to you. He's the coordinator of arts, athletics, and PE. Can't remember all three of those things, Stephen, but you do them so well. So, Stephen, if you'll come forward for us.
Hey guys, I'm going to try to be as brief, as concise as possible, and I hope that if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those to kind of bring clarity to this. If you look at this first slide, it kind of captures the essence of what our partnership is trying to accomplish. I'd like to look at it this way. We're trying to accomplish a lot without extending, and with extending very little in terms of our resources and what we're bringing to the table. I'll say this, ICRC has been amazing, great, been working with them, grassroots, sidebar conversations and meetings with their personnel since early spring of this past year. And so it's been a lot of conversation, very slow work, trying to come to the place where we feel like that we can move forward, get approval to kind of do this pilot. Bridging the middle years with purpose and play, the Bridge Development League, and all of these different stakeholder groups play a part in this. Lexbridge 5, of course, students, our partner, our community, everyone kind of has a say in this and can have a role. And so, since we've already have a MOU with ICRC in terms of facilities, you know, why is this different? What are we trying to accomplish here? So, let me say this. From the data that was given to us from ICRC, they've seen a decline in their sports leagues and participation since 2020. And of course, you know, that kind of corresponds with what was happening in our world at the time. They've still continued to see that decline in their programming. So they're looking for ways. They're looking for opportunities to engage the community, something outside the box. I will say this, the information I've gotten from them is, from their staff, is they have tried for many years. They kind of wanted somebody in the school, boots on the ground, a point of contact that they were directly connected to kind of build some sustained momentum, to recruit, to organize, to promote. So they've been looking for this opportunity with us. The information they've given us, a National Recreation and Park Association report in 2025, this seems to be the way that our world is moving. People trying to maximize their resources. 65% of parks and recreation agencies across the country partner with school systems for their youth sports leagues, and that happens in lots of different ways. Some school districts, of course, they're in for it, and they're putting a lot more financial resources with it. The model that we are promoting and we're trying to propose is more of, hey, let us come alongside you to help you do the work that you are doing. So rebranded joint effort, trying to target students in grades 5 through 8. Of course, we all know the benefit of keeping kids involved socially, emotionally. Just their academics also will improve. Research has shown this. A partnership would also strengthen the competitiveness of athletic programming at all levels in our community and school systems, create a stronger pipeline of athletes, keeping kids involved longer, promoting that lifelong wellness. Better player development, early exposure to structured training that's affiliated with our school-based teams, promoting lifelong well-being and fitness. And like I said, we've been talking about this with their staff for months now. Initially, there's the MOA, MOU, I believe, that you have access to that, kind of see what we're talking about. And that's the crux of the rest of this presentation is kind of pulling out those general details. So I'm not going to read every item line by line. I'm going to let you peruse that and just kind of ask questions as you see fit as we go through this and as we end. But initially, the conversation that we've had with ICRC is to pilot this bridge league, this development league with basketball in winter of 2025. If you know anything about sports, I mean, that is here. You know, they're starting to, we got a meeting with them this week, just to kind of make sure that we're staying on task and on par with if we can do this, what that would mean. We don't want to be held up. You know, if something were to happen, we want to be sitting on go, ready to do this and move. So we would pilot this opportunity in the winter of 2025. Students 5th through 8th grade, and that's boys and girls teams. Essentially what you're doing is we're trying to take all of their winter basketball programming, and we're trying to market it, promote it, brand it, and build it so that they can increase their enrollment, so they can increase their footprint. How are we going to do that? By utilizing our leverage and our resources and our reach, because we have access to our students in the community, to kind of point them and direct them and urge them and prod them to get involved and to get signed up. One of the big things that you see when you get to the middle school level is that kids want to be affiliated with their school sports teams. They want to be, it's that pride to know that I can play for the Eagles, or I can play for the Yellow Jackets, or I can play, you know, for the Silver Foxes, you know, and we want to use that momentum to say, you have an opportunity. There's only going to be 10 kids on that 7th, 8th grade team, but you have an opportunity in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to play for the Eagles, to play for the Yellow Jackets. You'll have that opportunity because we'll be partnering with ICRC. They'll be using our facilities. You can practice. You'll be able to play games in the school gymnasiums. So we're hoping this will be a huge draw for our kids, and they'll go home and say, hey, we want to do that. Mom, Dad, I want to get signed up for this. So we're planning to orchestrate the marketing of this to coincide the next few weeks as it gets ready moving up, and as we go into tryouts for our school-based teams. We plan on going ahead and making sure that we're getting access to those kids to start that if everything goes the way as planned. So students would sign up and play for the middle school team that they would be zoned for, and we're hoping that would create continuity, camaraderie among students, those schools, the different elementary schools. So they would be grouped. All the schools the elementary schools that are grouped for Chapin Middle School, they would play together. All the schools that are zoned for elementary schools that are zoned for Irma Middle, they would play together. So you would start to build that camaraderie and everything from the gate, starting in 5th grade and moving on up. All right, so just general details. Like I said, that no facility, custodial, or staffing charges will be levied on ICRC. This is kind of the back and forth that we've had where they say, yeah, this would be beneficial for us. We agree to this. All leagues will be governed by ICRC, their rules, their volunteer coach selection, their game officials, player evaluations, drafts, playing requirements. Another thing that we've talked about is possibly creating employment opportunities for our upper-level athletes in high school, where they could actually get some cash and get a job, you know, working with them, working the games as officials or running the clock and those types of things. The league games and practices will take place at ICRC and Lexridge 5 facilities as defined. ICRC roles, basically, we want them to do what they're good at, and they are the experts in our community and youth athletic programming. And we want them to continue to be that, and we want to come alongside them and offer them our resources, an olive branch, and say, look, what can we do to help you do that? How can we promote that? How can we push that further and get it deeper into the culture of our community and who we are? They would do everything. They're organizing the game schedules. They're doing everything that they always do, they will continue to do. All right? The next thing, our roles, like I said, they are super excited about the prospect of adding a point of contact in our schools for a very small return on investment. We can give them a person that they can contact throughout the year anytime we want to market, promote, get information out, try to get people involved, serve as a marketing or publicity person, and when we get teams made, to pull those kids and take pictures of those kids and those teams who normally wouldn't be on a school team. We can take pictures of those kids and we can market that and show them that they're involved and they're affiliated with their schools. Develop, distribute promotional materials, provide input and instruction from our coaches. We've already, because we want this to be successful, if we can move on this, we've already ran interference of all of our basketball staff, and they said they are more than willing to give up their time to come over once ICRC has selected their coaches and their staff to look at the systemics and to teach them and show them how they run practice, the terminology they use, the systems that they implement, because then it will allow us to start creating that pipeline and that same dialogue and common language that kids would see no matter what grade they're at and where they're playing. We want to make sure that we, and as I mentioned earlier to you, showing up at our tryouts and making sure that kids are aware of this opportunity. We think that's huge, and that kids will be pumped about the opportunity for that. And this is just a leveled document to kind of show you the different roles that people would play: high schools, parents, students, community, elementary schools. You know, and the goal would be that the community would get involved too, that you can stop by on Saturdays and watch games at our schools of the youth and our kids that are their own teams that are different feeder patterns. So the next steps, you know, hopefully gaining approval, we would like to go to collaborating with human resources to finalize those descriptions, postings, to hire people internally on our staff. That would be the idea, because principals are already with them, they're working, so there would be a short turnaround time. Picking the people, giving them the ability to select those people through that interview process who are going to be most apt and best qualified to do exactly what we're asking them to do. District athletic coordinator, that would be me, among many other job descriptions and hats that I may wear. Communications, Amanda's team, Courtney Mabrito has been great. She's got so many good ideas and just how to market this and promote it, working with them, and engage in ongoing monitoring and evaluation of this pilot partnership. Like I said, the essence of this initiative is opening up the door to opportunity. There's a limitless amount of opportunity that exists in getting the right people with their feet around the table to see what we can do to make athletics and keeping youth involved and promoting that play and that purpose at this age. There is a huge, huge potential. And this is just the very tip. That's what we see it as. At the end of the basketball, the basketball pilot, we would come around. We've already got some ideas of what sports we would like to kind of go into next, something like flag football that would maybe be big in spring. But once again, it's just us thinking smarter, not harder, not a lot of overhead. We're partnering very deeply with someone in our community we already have a surface level partnership with to try to be far reaching in our impact with our kids. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
Mr. Bainum?
Do you know of any opportunities for our special needs students, any programs that they might have that would be something appropriate for them?
I can inquire with Jason White. I'm sure, you know, and get some more information for you in terms of how they're currently handling those requests and what that looks like, because I can definitely get that and get it to you.
Ms. Hodel?
For the fifth to eighth grade, especially boys, is like a big size difference a lot of times. Do you envision that there might be, especially if there's enough kids that want it, that there might be more than one team affiliated with a middle school, for example?
That's exactly right, and that's what ICRC does. They group them by, it's easier for us, I kind of think in terms of grades, like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, but they actually do it by age. So they break it down into divisions by age, and there would be, so however many kids come out for the Chapin feeder pattern, for example, there may be 70 kids. Then that means they would have 6 to 7, they could have 6 to 7 Chapin teams, and they would just differentiate them, Eagles 1, Eagles 2, Eagles 3, that kind of thing.
That was my next question.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Scully?
Yeah, on the surface, it sounds wonderful. I guess my concern would be, what would be the negative impact of this type of program on existing organizations such as the YMCA and church leagues, for example? Obviously, if kids come over from those programs into this one, I mean, YMCA, they're nonprofits, but they're relying on those revenues and those fees from those kids. Are we going to be negatively impacting those types of organizations with this program?
I think no matter if we decide to do something or not to do something, I mean, I think you're exactly right. There's a potential for a negative impact on any group, because the reality is you've got X number of kids in our community, and you're going to take and divide those kids up in different ways. So the more opportunities that you have and promote, the chances are that other programs are going to be effective from an enrollment standpoint. Our hope would be to grab the kids that normally would not participate in any capacity, especially when you get up into 8th grade, because the funnel is really big when you're at 5th grade, but as you keep going upwards, the number of kids that participate just drastically decreases. So our goal would be to target those kids as well, to make sure that we are trying to not only hit the groups that normally participate, but the ones where they definitely see a huge drop-off, to keep those kids involved as long as possible. But no, you're exactly right. I mean, there's a potential that other organizations could be negatively impacted. And I think that's why it's important, once we do this, to sit down and have a conversation of what, and find out, look at the data of what we had. And honestly, I don't think that I'm speaking out of turn or not, Dr. Ross, I don't think that we're opposed to having conversations with other groups as well. But I think, we need to start the conversation and begin somewhere. And this seemed like the path of least resistance, because we already have that established partnership with ICRC.
Certainly, and I appreciate that. I would just ask, would you please look into that and the effect of it potentially? As a public body, a governmental organization, I just personally don't feel that we almost kind of upset the competitive balance. And I don't know that, I struggle with the concept of government organizations taking business from private organizations. And so if you'll just get information on that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Snipes. I know that if you got a pool of kids, there's going to be a pull in different directions. Right now, a lot of parents are being torn because of so many kids playing travel ball. So they're not getting to play with the rec league with a lot of their classmates and things like that. They're playing travel ball, which is a hugely expensive endeavor for parents, especially those that travel afar. But I'm like you. I really, in all my years of experience with athletics, I really think, especially you get the district coaches involved and talking to the kids. Some of the smaller towns have been doing this for years, just to build their programs. But I think that helping middle school is such an awkward age, and they want to find themselves. They need to find some sort of attachment. And that's what it's about, discovery, I guess. But I hope you have 500 kids out there, to choose from. I hope you have enough volunteers, because that sometimes that can be an issue. Jason White has called me once or twice to help when I didn't have any players, which I do. I enjoy it. But I'm excited about the prospect of getting more kids. And you do have kids that'll do both. They'll play with this league, and then when the church league plays on Sunday night or something like that, they'll still be involved with that too. But I'm excited with this prospect. Thank you.
Ms. Barnhart?
Couple questions. How will this, if in any way, interfere with the already ongoing sports teams? I know that we're starting off with basketball. Not really sure their schedule. My son plays baseball, and he plays for multiple leagues as well. But they have practices, they have certain games on certain days. How will this, if in any way, interfere with those?
Well, and that's something that we pitch to ADs, in getting their support, is that the conversation would started with, we would like to do this, but we don't want to interfere with what's already happening and taking place. So that is being taken into consideration on this side, to make sure that it won't conflict with practices, and we also won't conflict with games for the already scheduled teams.
Ms. Huddle?
On this slide, the job descriptions and postings, are these entirely new positions, or are these stipends?
correct me if I'm wrong, stipends. Use
All
those.
stipends, correct.
Okay, so these would be, like, our existing employees would be applying for these and to get a stipend?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, anybody else? All right, thank you.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
That moves us to discussion of board policy DBJ, budget transfers. Ms. Tucker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Tonight, we bring forward the board policy DBJ, budget transfers. This policy was asked to be brought forth. There was a Attorney General opinion prior to me starting in this role. I believe it was from the spring of 2024, May 6, 2024. And at this point, would just like clarification on our current board policy, which discusses to approve general fund line item transfers in the aggregate totaling no more than $10,000, and general fund budget transfers over $10,000 will be presented to the board for approval. All line item transfers, regardless of the amount, will appear in the monthly financial report. So just wanted to bring this for discussion based on the Attorney General's opinion as well as our current policy, and just have discussion about what does line item transfers mean, what is the authority given to me through the board, and what discussion about just our current policy.
All right. Do we have any feedback, questions, comments to start? Ms. Hodel?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that one of the concerns or issues is that the Attorney General's opinion, and I don't have it handy, but it says, it calls them line item transfers, but there's no definition of what a line item is.
You are correct. The Attorney General's opinion does talk about, I believe it's in the conclusion. It talks about the line item transfers and the authority delegated to the board through the state law, as opposed to the authority that the board can delegate to the superintendent or his/her designee. And so the differentiation in that, the Attorney General's opinion talks about, believe allowing budget transfers without board approval could be viewed as an unauthorized delegation of the board's discretionary authority. So clarifying that, but also realizing that the board approves the budget with the fund, function, and object code. And so each line on the budget that the board approves, this is from our budget book from this year, is a function, fund, function, and object code, not down to the actual specific location level. So this is the budget that the board approves, realizing that in finance, we get down to much more granular level of detail. So to move something between object codes within a function is not functionally changing what's going on, with the exception of changing things out of salaries and benefits. So within each function, so within the function of instruction, there are salaries, employee benefits, purchase services, supplies, and other. The majority of the budget transfers that come through my office are transfers between object codes within a function. So within the function of instruction, moving money from a purchase service or buying a specific buying a specific supply. A lot of times principals, one year they wanted to buy books, next year they want to bring in a consultant to do something, or next year they want to send somebody for travel. So a lot of the budget transfers that come across my desk are down to that level of detail. They're not necessarily changing the function or the intent of the budget that was approved, but it would change the budget that the board approved. And so that's where the concern falls into place, because it would change the object line within each function from the board's approved budget. And so looking at what other school districts do, I believe I shared with you 3 policies from other school districts across the state, because there are varying degrees of board policy DBJ. And one specific school district states the superintendent and chief financial officer have the authority to transfer budget amounts within the same function and subfunction under the guidelines found in the Financial Accounting Handbook for South Carolina Public School Districts. The superintendent will report any material transfers to the board on a periodic basis, but this policy doesn't define what material transfers are. Other school districts specify a specific dollar amount, so anything under that threshold. I come from the background of state government, where the state has specific regulations on what you can and can't transfer there. It's specific about not transferring anything out of supply or out of salaries and benefits, but within a budget group or a function, essentially, you can make those transfers between different lines. So that's what we wanted to bring for discussion, more for point of clarification for myself as well as my finance staff.
Thank you. Ms. Huddle?
There was a report at our last meeting of transfers. Was that all transfers?
That was all transfers for the entire school year last year.
Is that a pretty easy report to produce?
It
or
is.
So just one suggestion might be that we handle this kind of like we do offers, where employment offers are made upon board approval, so they're contingent, I should say. So would a possibility be once a month, you go ahead and make the transfers, and then once a month, those are presented at the board, and you don't even have to get up and talk or anything. It's just kind of like what we do with the salaries, and we just vote yes. And that way we're doing what the Attorney General wants us to do. And if there was one on there that people had questions about, they could ask. Is that a possibility?
I think that's a great possibility. In fact, that's something that Mr. Bradley and I discussed. Bringing those forward every month is just a part of the monthly financial report. So the second meeting of every month where we would have our financial report, just bring those as part of the packet. And then anything over that $10,000 threshold would still come to the board for approval.
I mean, the only exception I would make to that is the $10,000 is really an arbitrary number, and it doesn't really comport with the AG's opinion. So why not just bring them all and the board votes yes, and if there's questions about really big ones, people can ask.
My question to that would be if there is something that is moving between the function. So if we are materially changing, and again, using that word materially without a definition, but moving something from instruction to operations, something like that, I feel like maybe would merit board approval.
And maybe
I agree with that.
Mr. Bradley could ask the AG, like, if within the same function and sub-function, would that suffice? Would that meet theirs, or whatever your terminology you would prefer?
The function and sub-function was the direction really that leans back toward the State Department of Education. I've actually reached out to them and their CFO for guidance to see if their attorneys would review what's in their financial accounting handbook, because it talks about the function and the sub-function and keeping things within those lines as far as board budget approvals, but it doesn't specifically address transfers. So I've asked for direction from them as well to try to give us some more guidance on what other school districts are doing, just because looking at the policies across the board in the state, they're vastly different.
I would be fine with you kind of continuing how we've been under the 10,000 if it's in the same function. But then to Ms. Huddle's request about getting the report, I mean, I'm just speaking for self, but I would be fine with that. I saw Dr. Ross was trying to make a comment.
I think to make sure that we are in compliance with all, we need really the vocabulary fixed in the policy. I don't think we can just kind of operate. My recommendation is that we bring back a recommendation for discussion that clearly articulates the difference between function and sub-function. Those are things we need to do to operate.
I'm fine
We
with that.
take those about
That
5
sounds
a
like a
week.
good idea.
I think the word transfer, we cannot get away from. So then to that point, do we handle that as Ms. Huddle said? But we need to separate the operational functions and sub-functions of your daily operations, and then the reporting mechanisms of transfers. If we can bring back some language to this body for discussion
I
that
think
fixes
that would be helpful, and
I
I think
think-
it would help with the discussion piece.
Amen.
Is that a piece? amenable to-
Absolutely. And I hope by the next board meeting, I'll also have some direction from the State Department of Education, because I think that would be helpful.
Thank you so much. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Herring.
Just one question. Did you say that in your role working for state government, that it allowed transfers at those lower levels without approval?
It did. So the state actually has very specific guidelines. There's a certain percentage of the agency's budget that can be transferred in and out of salaries. And then within each operational program, so when the state is appropriating the budget. Within certain programs, there are certain thresholds of percentages that you can move between them. Unless it's a very specific, they call them X programs, those lines can't be moved because those are special appropriations for a certain project.
So it sounds like the practices at the state level are in complete, incongruence with the Attorney General opinion.
They are very different, and I actually spoke to Mr. Bradley about this. So the state, again, their elected body approves a budget, but is appropriated to the state agencies, which is in direct, I am not a lawyer, so, but seems direct conflict with what the Attorney General's opinion talks about with the elected bodies of school districts. But there is a state law that allows for budget transfers from the legislature, and that doesn't necessarily apply to school districts. So I think that's the differentiating factor. But again, just trying to get clarification because there's multiple bodies that have opinions and want to make sure that we are following the law and all of the policies. So we will bring back some guidance and hopefully some clearer language. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then that takes us to the final item on the discussion agenda, which is discussion of board policy KE, public concerns and complaints. Dr. Ross?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the sake of time, this matter will come before us again in discussion. So we will not have to move to action at the next meeting. However, I wanted to talk about our current policy, board policy KE, public concerns and complaints, which basically talks about how matters will be referred for investigation and action. Will be referred to the superintendent for investigation and appropriate action and recommendations. It also says the board at its next regular scheduled meeting will consider the grievance and complaint and dispose of the matter in accordance to best judgment. And this is in order to have these matters satisfactorily resolved. There's a lot of vocabulary in this policy as well that I want to address. And the first three are the notions of concerns, complaint, and grievances. It is important not to use these terms interchangeably because they have different meanings. A concern by definition is it's a worry, it's an anxiety, it's a feeling, but they may not be backed by any evidence. We receive a lot of concerns, but those concerns are not complaints. Complaints are any affront that is also provided with evidence. So there is something that we can actually investigate. There is something there that we can directly deal with. It's very easy for the administration to investigate complaints because we know the first point in which to look. It's a statement, it's an act, it's a picture, it's something that holds as a fact. A lot of concerns that we spend time looking into, we cannot find it's a difficulty finding the facts. And then there are grievances. Grievances is when you have there's evidence against a rule or a policy. That violation covers as a grievance. All of these are dealt with in a very different way by the administration. Our burden of proof and investigation is very high on grievances, very specific on complaints, but all over the place with concerns. As a result, there are two other definitions that we need to address, and that is that of retaliation and what is called resolved satisfactorily. We hear a lot that items were not brought to the administration out of fear of retaliation. Retaliation is that an adverse action will take against an employee for something that they have done, vis-a-vis, or i.e. telling or sharing a complaint or a concern or a grievance. And so because of the interchangeable nature of how this is used, I've looked at, and I've had Dr. Turner kind of look at some other districts and what they're doing to align our public concerns and complaints with what our staff concerns and complaints policies look like. And in that format, you have different levels. A lot of those are referred to the lowest or the incident, the area closest to the incident. We would call that level 1. If it's not resolved at the principal director level or with the school, then it moves to level 2. That's with the appropriate chief that handles that matter would address it. Level 3 is to the superintendent, and then level 4 to the board. In a lot of policies, you will see that the concerns, the complaints, and the grievances must go from level 1 to level 4, so that, because in a lot of cases, we can get those things resolved, in some cases, right at the teacher's classroom. But this is our current system. There are many concerns, many concerns, an ocean of concerns. But if they all have to funnel through the superintendent, I fear that we won't adequately address all the concerns that exist there. So we see them reported from various ways, through emails, phone calls, social media, but having a systematic way to address it so that we can move to this notion of satisfactorily resolved. All of these we are looking to define and to create a policy that allows this level system. And so some of our neighbors, a lot of our local districts, have more defined policies for public concerns and complaints and grievances that we would like to move towards. We wanted to share this with you for just discussion, bring back to this body for discussion recommendations for more defined policy to ensure that when our public has concerns, complaints, or grievances, that there's a systematized way to address those.
And for internal complaints and grievances, if it's with their principal or director, do they go straight to Dr. Turner?
Dr. Turner, if you would like to talk about how we handle the internal or employee complaints, concerns, and grievances.
That's policy GBK, and under GBK, it has levels as well. It also refers to the level closest to the point of the concern. The exception to that is if the concern is with the principal or with the direct supervisor, they don't have to start there. If that is the person that the grievance, concern, or complaint is being raised against, then GBK clearly outlines the policy that it can come to the Chief Human Resources Officer for investigation.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Knight.
Ms. Satterfield?
Yeah, I would like to say this. The success of a parent getting the resolution that they're looking for, or a teacher, or an assistant, or somebody within the school system, really depends on just how successful we are in following this pattern. In other words, when I was a principal, I hated when I got a call from the district office that somebody complaining about a teacher, and I said, well, they never called me. You know, it made me feel like, well, why didn't you tell them to call me? And the teachers would, you know, once or twice I got it from the teachers that said, Mr. Satterfield, you should have told them just to call me. Why are you talking to me? So I think it's a little bit demeaning to teachers if you go over their head, if something that they can feel like they're professionals they can handle, and it's a little demeaning to the principals and everybody else if we allow this to move forward in such a manner. If they can just call a board member and the board member, you know, makes issue of it, I'll get it solved. Isn't well, then everybody below that in line who could have easily, most of the time, 99% of the time, have handled that without any big issue. So I think that the trust, we earn a lot of trust when we follow this. When we trust our teachers to do so many things, well, we should trust them to talk to parents and deal with, whatever situation it might be. At the same time, we should do the principals in the same fashion, and everybody along that, I don't want to call it, chain of command, but it's really in this sense of hierarchy. So if we circumvent that, and the last thing I wanted to say is, in my visiting schools, I always tell teachers, I said, let us know. If you talk to your principals. Talk to your principals. If you want to bend an ear, talk to the superintendent. People are genuinely interested in what you have to say. We're here to support you. Teachers are really afraid to stand up in front of a school board, and that's always been the way it is. It's not this board. It's just been that way as long as I was ever in education. It's been intimidating for them. So creating that atmosphere of working together in trust and following this thing that this board policy that we already have is really important to everybody that's involved in the process. That's all I got. Thank you.
Ms. Huddle?
It's not about my comment's not about the policy per se, but just, I think times are changing in that, there are a lot of alternatives now to public school. There are private school, charter school, homeschool. And I think, and a lot of people are also conflict avoiders. They're tired, and they will move their child without ever complaining to anyone. You know, they won't complain to the teacher, they won't complain to the principal, they won't complain to anyone. I've had 2 calls from parents who called me upset about, and it usually wasn't one particular thing, I'll say that, but it was after they'd already left the district. And so while we're talking about this, I think it would also be good to talk about how do we get feedback from parents? How do we encourage parents to do that? To talk, you know, because I'll ask, well, did you raise this? And usually they raise maybe 1 or 2 of their issues, but not all of them. And they're afraid of retaliation, or they're afraid it won't really help or anything. So just while we're talking about this, I'd also like us to just talk about how can we make our parents feel heard and that they won't be retaliated, because that's the only way any organization gets better, is by listening and having people that aren't afraid. And the same thing with teachers, right? You know, you don't want to get a grievance. How can we do, and I think we do a lot already with teachers, but maybe there's more that we can do. So I just ask that while we look at the policy, we also look at how do we listen so that we never even get to the official concern or complaint.
And I was going to say, after Mr. Satterfield's comment about principals feeling away or teachers feeling away, if maybe the district office or the board is contacted about an issue, I think to Ms. Huddle's point about people feeling like they'll be retaliated against, I can see how some parents may be a little bit more hesitant to start there, or maybe they have addressed the issue once or twice and have not felt like they've been seen or heard. So, you know, as we get complaints, should we get complaints from parents, I also think it's important to maybe clarify that they've tried the other steps instead of saying this is your, you know, this is the process or whatever, because we don't want to turn parents away from advocating for their kids, no matter what the process might look like for each individual family and what their level of comfort is. Just a thought. Do we have any other questions or concerns on this? I know we're going to discuss it again at the next meeting. All right.
I move that we adjourn.
All in favor? Thank you. And that adjourns our meeting at 8:35.